Hey folks, welcome back to Game Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the game news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're going over Gaming News Consolidated. This is March 23rd through the 29th. This is where I go over videos and articles, and I put it all on a podcast for you in one place. Sometimes it can be kind of frustrating trying to keep up with all of the other videos, keeping up with the articles, figuring out what's rumored, what's facts, and basically I try to keep it clear for y'all here on the channel. So, and there's of course more than we do than just gaming news, but this is just one aspect of it. There's reviews when I can get there, or initial looks, and then there's also playthroughs of different games too. So, because I got to do something fun. This just hacking through all this information. So, welcome to the channel. So we're going to talk about the Rise of Ronin a little bit. We're going to learn about some another studio basically having all layoffs, which is pretty brutal because, again, their game didn't sell. You're going to talk about Ubisoft and TenCent making a new subsidiary, which is going to be pretty interesting, I think. And then we're also going to go over Nintendo Direct, which isn't going to be every single game, but it's going to be a really good chunk of them. And then we're also going to go over Witcher 4 and Intergalactic a little bit, and also Hogwarts Legacy Director's Cut, and what's going on with that. And then at the very end, we're also going to chat about the games coming in April. So like, sub, all that jazz if you're interested in this content, and also share it too. But hey, let's go ahead and get started. So, Rise of the Ronin was actually released on PC, and again, for many, there's major performance issues. There's also saved data bugs, and to where like your entire save can just disappear, which is horrible. And then, here's another port that basically wasn't ready, and it was pushed out anyway. And this is getting so frustrating for PC. They've had some horrible ports. Some of the ports that have actually been truly wonderful is, let's see, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. That actually ran really good for the most part. And then, let's see, the other one I think was Atomfall, which that one just released. But yeah, there's a ton of games for PC where the ports are just brutal. You got to wait for patches. There's major bugs, and PC always seems to kind of get the worst of it. But yeah, if you're interested in getting Rise of the Ronin, maybe you want to wait. Maybe you won't have issues, hopefully, if you bought it already. But yeah, this is just a frustrating thing. And yeah, it's just, really, they're just not ready, and that's what the industry is doing. So, Rise of the Ronin, yeah, it's definitely going to need some pretty big patches. We also had a survey done on PC gamers, and boy, this was actually pretty eye-opening. Shows that 92% play older games. Now, Tread, what does that mean? Well, that basically means games that are 6 years or older are games that are being played by 92% of the entire PC consumer base. Now, this was basically looked at and sifted through by Newzoo, their survey. Of course, they extrapolate from this, so it's not like perfect representation of everybody. So these are generally estimates, but these are some of the best estimates that we can get with the data I'm about to go over. And they usually do some pretty good surveys, so I like to see what they're doing. But yeah, extrapolating, we're looking, their total survey was 73,000 players, and then they cross-referenced with over 10,000 games. And so, yeah, this was a huge survey. Usually sample sizes are in the thousands, not tens of thousands. So this is a fairly good survey compared to what we normally get for that margin of error. But yeah, Newzoo says that the PC market is actually growing at a steady rate. And maybe, too, this is why some of the graphics cards are just insane prices. But yeah, there's an estimated 907.5 million PC players at the end of 2024. Like, I really want that to sink in. We've mentioned it here on the channel that there's an estimate of roughly 1 billion PC players. And here it is, 900 million of them. This is an increase of 34 million in just the last year. So, yeah, roughly, January through December of 2024, we added 34 million PC players to the market. And, if we're seeing this growth, we're seeing it being steady. We're seeing, too, that the overall gaming market is huge. This is why PC is being focused on by the developers. We've gone over some surveys in the past where it shows that, basically 65% of devs are like, yeah, we're making games for PC. Maybe some for console, but yeah, the majority is over at PC. Why? Because that's where the players are. We're taking a look at what PlayStation is doing with their IPs and their games, and even day and date for some of them. They're putting them over in PC now. We used to usually wait, anywhere from 2 to 4 years to get a game over there, and now they're showing up roughly in 12 months, or even sooner than that, or even being launched day and date when it actually comes out for PlayStation, and putting it over on Steam same day. So very interesting. Again, they're wanting to grab some of that money. We're also looking too at Xbox. Okay, Xbox has already been pushing their games over to PC and to Steam and Epic as well, and GOG, and so they're trying to get their piece of the pie for the last while. And then we see this possible, somewhat collaboration with Steam OS, at least the Steam library, on the on Xbox, some form factor of that, whether it's the handheld, whether it's the console. We're not entirely sure. Again, there hasn't been any quote official announcement, but yeah, I do think it is really, really interesting with what's going on, because again, the console market essentially is kind of needing the PC players. And yeah, when you have 900 million potential buyers over there, that is pretty freaking insane. Now, taking a look at Steam overall, there's roughly 132 million or 135 million monthly active users. So where's the other, 770,000? I'm not quite sure. I'm really not quite sure, but yeah, that is pretty curious. The report also shows too that there's roughly 653 million currently on console. Well, when we take a look at Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo, take a look at their network users, not necessarily just on current gen, but past gen too. We're looking at 404 million. And so again, where's the other 250 million that they're getting this, this data from? It's while I still genuinely trust the survey, I'm just wondering where exactly this data is coming from, because there's definitely some gaps in there. And yeah, I'd just like to know exactly where those are coming from. But again, we didn't really have that data. So the 404 million between the three main consoles, that is the latest data that we have from Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. And roughly, they're all generally pretty close to each other. And it's pretty evenly split. So, and of course, some people, they have all three or two out of the three or whatever. And, but yeah, it is really, really interesting with how many gamers are actually out there, because it's a bunch. The report also shows that 67% of the player hours are generally on 6-year-old games or older. So again, we're playing games from 2019, or I guess it'd be 2024 data. So 2018 or earlier, which is pretty crazy. So that's even before Ghost Recon Breakpoint, because that was 2019, and it would have been the first anniversary of Fortnite. Think how old that is. 2018, I think, also would have been God of War Ragnarok. So, yeah, pretty interesting when you start thinking back. The current games just really aren't being bought or played as much, which is interesting. And this is across all genres. It's not. This is just player hours of where they're spending their time, broken down by the age of the game. 25% of these players are playing somewhere between 2 to 5-year-old games. So that's only a quarter. And then 8% are 2 years or less. So yeah, that's really not a lot. The majority of the people, they're sticking with the games that they've been playing or that they've been investing in. And we have some more data too, because the top 5 games are all live service games. And this makes sense. I mean, the live service model is basically the grind to keep you playing so that you keep buying. And yeah, that's pretty interesting. Some of these games were Counter-Strike Go, Fortnite, League of Legends, those kind of games. And I think Roblox was another one. But yeah, it's just really interesting of where people are spending their time. And it's in the multiplayer live service space. And that's where a lot of the hours are going, even on PC. And that makes sense too. Why some of these games, or excuse me, why 67% of players are basically playing older games that are 2 years or more, because they're not really interested. And again, there's only so much time in a day, and we've mentioned this too on the channel with live service. You have to be able to bring players from other live service games, because not everybody likes live service. Not everybody necessarily wants the grind. I mean, we could talk about Call of Duty, how many people have quit that. There's still a lot of people that actually play, but there's definitely not, like, in my opinion, a growing consumer base like they used to. And that's why they brought, like, the old servers online for the old Call of Duty games, or why stuff is on sale kind of more often. And um, but yeah, it is just interesting to see how many people actually play live service games, but it's the older stuff. And yeah, it's just really interesting. So I wonder too, this survey takes a look at battle.net, would be my guess. They're probably looking at that as well, because that's a big piece of the PC market, and I would hope they would be including that, because yeah, that's a pretty big piece of the pie. Yeah, taking a look at this survey, it's just like, man, like, the PC market is huge. They're playing the older games, and again, when you get blipped into a live service game, that's basically what you're going to be playing. And again, with only so much time in a day or availability to play, you just want to play what you're working on, what you know, because sometimes taking the time to learn a new game can be pretty frustrating, and it can take days, weeks, or even months to really feel like you're getting anywhere. And like, I played Destiny for a long time. I played EVE Online for a long time. Same with World of Tanks and War Thunder. And some of the Call of Duties too. Like, those are time sync type of games. And the majority of those are all live service. So there's also Elden Ring, but that's not a live service game. But yeah, that was, I mean, over 500 hours just through my first playthrough, which is crazy, when I say that aloud. But yeah, it was a really fun game. So yeah, if you have really good games that are coming out, or you've been investing in a type of live service, new games that are coming out kind of don't really have a chance to kick off. And I think that was also part of the issue with Concord, part of the issue with, like, Foam Stars, and other live service games that just aren't great. And it's like, if you can't actually improve something, make a genre better, or make it more enticing. Like, I think of X Defiant as well from Ubisoft. That game was closed within basically 12 months. And it's just sad, because I think there's potential there. But again, people have already plugged in and been plugged in to something else already. And to pull people away, like, your game really has to be special in order to actually do that. So yeah, it is part of the live service equation, and it is part of an issue for new devs. And I think that's partly why just devs are like, nope, live service just isn't working, because we can't pull people away from the investments that they've made in another game. It's the same thing with Rainbow Six Siege. I think that was another one of the top 5 of games that was played, because that's, again, a really big IP for a lot of people. It's made over $1 billion for Ubisoft. I mean, it's one of their bangers. Unfortunately, only one of their few. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting with the report. Let's talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure. Well, we found out it didn't sell well, that this was released in October of last year in 2024. So it's basically been out for 6 months. And the publisher was Square Enix, and the dev was Deck 9 Games. And the narrative designer made a post that basically no one was able to claim the award for the game and for the developers at GDC Awards, which they won. Like, they actually won an award. Congratulations to them. But no one was able to claim it because they were all laid off. Like, yeah, everybody's gone. You're just like, woohoo, yeah. Like, where is everybody? Well, they were all fired. I mean, that's horrible. I mean, publishers, they're really not waiting around anymore. And most devs are not independent. The studios are owned by some other publisher. But man, like, yeah, publishers, they're not messing around anymore. Like, if your game is not selling, man, you are quickly cut to the curb. Even if your game is successful, but you're not going to be, quote unquote, making enough money in their eyes, the publisher can cut you anyway. Like I think of Xbox selling um, Tango GameWorks. They made Hi-Fi Rush Game of the Year, and they cut them anyway. It's like, what? Now, luckily, they sold the studio to Crafton, so they're not completely gone. And they also sold the IP, that Hi-Fi Rush went with them. But I just think it's kind of shocking that, that we have that just so quick. We even saw with, um, I think it was Legends of, or it was, oh man, it's a Japanese or like South Korean game, so I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But yeah, there were some other games that came out even just this year, and the day of launch, everyone was getting notifications at some studios that yeah, you're fired, you're just gone. So yeah, that is incredibly brutal. And overall, Double Exposure did not review super well. It's already 40% off, so the publisher is trying to get money from people. And yeah, 40% off for a game that's only been out for 6 months is pretty brutal. But we did find out that the sales are roughly less than half of the first game. So yeah, just because your first game did pretty well, you're making another one does not mean success. And then too, if people are just kind of tired of the same thing, or again, you're not really doing anything new. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there for video games. I mean, there's over 500 games made on Xbox every year. There was over 19,000 games made and put on Steam last year. And there's also hundreds made for Sony every year. A lot of them are, of course, third party. They don't have any first parties coming out right now. But yeah, it's just brutal out there. So yeah, you really got to create something special, get some good stuff behind your product so that you can actually sell it. But yeah, I just feel bad for the devs because it's not like most of them just kind of lazily help make a game. I mean, they're probably busting their can in most cases, and they get laid off anyway. And yeah, that sucks. Did find out, I mentioned earlier, I think a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, Pokemon Go is now officially sold to Scopely, Saudi Arabia company, sold them for $3.5 billion. Now, again, this was kind of interesting. This was made by Niantic, and yeah, they've actually sold to Scopely now. So yeah, Pokemon Go is going to continue. All of your data is over at Scopely now. You're still going to have your accounts. It really should not affect your game at all. But yeah, you do have new owners and developers actually making that game, and yeah, it's still going, which is incredible. I played that at launch a long time ago, like man, over 10 years. Man, has it really been that long? That's crazy. Let's take a look at the EU. Well, they're officially forcing Apple to open up to third parties. Man, this is going to be kind of interesting what happens with all this. So far with what we know, Apple has had some lawsuits already and also some antitrust lawsuits. They've been, quote unquote, according to like Scotland and Ireland, dodging taxes. And so yeah, no, big companies, I mean, their governments are going to get them their money that they want from you, whether it's right or not. And a lot of these lawsuits and antitrust suits have been in the UK and in Europe. And so now the EU is officially forcing Apple to open up to third parties. And so, yeah, it's a matter of time before it, starts happening in other places in the world too. Like that monopolization is going to start to disappear. And so, yeah, this will be interesting. Things like AirDrop will be opened up to third-party devs, and also Bluetooth pairing for third-party products. So we're starting to see the ecosystem that they've built, the paywall system ultimately, and the monopolization, and that's not going to really be the case. And if it's AirDrop and Bluetooth pairing, which are pretty big features, of course, it's going to continue to open up, I'm sure, into other stuff for third-party apps. I know this is probably also a good thing for Xbox because they're trying to get the Xbox app out there to get their stream libraries out there and Game Pass and all of this other stuff. So I'm sure that's coming in the future as well. But yeah, this is pretty crazy. And then Apple has already spent tens of billions paying fines and dealing with lawsuits and settling over the last several years because of all of the antitrust and lawsuits that they've had. So yeah, more stuff will likely be opened. More areas or countries or regions will likely be opened up in the future. And this also makes me curious. Ultimately, does this make Apple less secure? And it's also going to cut into their margins. So, like, their pricing is likely to go down as the competition starts coming in. Because if the competition is just good enough or fairly close to the equivalent of quality of Apple products, people are probably going to go to the third party. Like, are you really going to pay, $200 for like Apple AirPods or something when you can pay $100 for something else to just be able to use and listen to your music or your podcast or whatever? I mean, seriously, a lot of people are going to go with what's cheaper, especially now, because even with all the inflationary pricing that we've had, it still hasn't gone down. It has kind of flatlined a little bit, but for some areas, I guess in Europe, yes, there has been a little bit of deflation. But ultimately, yeah, this is kind of insane. I never thought I would see the day where Apple would be forced to actually do this. And of course, Apple doesn't have to do this in other parts of the world, but if they want to continue to keep operating in the EU, which is a pretty big market for them, then yeah, they better actually start doing this pretty much effective immediately. So, but yeah, I do wonder if that opens up security issues. Because again, that's been one of their biggest selling points is like there's only 5 viruses in the whole world that can actually be, dangerous. And I think people should just be more careful with what they're actually doing. And now they're going to have to start doing that. So yeah, I think it'll be pretty interesting. All right, let's talk about Ubisoft and Tencent. So big news on Friday. Ubisoft and Tencent are starting a new subsidiary. I'm going to call it Ubi2 because we don't have an official name yet, or at least that I've been able to see. And yeah, billions were pumped into this. Basically, Tencent put in roughly like $1.6 billion of their own money. And this is pretty expensive. Of course, there's billions on the other side, quote unquote, from Ubisoft, which I'm not really sure where they're getting that money. We've looked at their financials before, and good golly, man, yeah, they really need some help. Now, Ubi 2 is going to be taking 3 IPs with them, and Ubi 2 is going to have a more independent creative direction with how they make their games. And ultimately, Ubisoft, the original, they're going to be taking royalties from whatever money they actually make. So, of course, they want them to be made well, but there's going to be kind of more like a hands-off approach from what we're hearing so far. But the 3 IPs are going to be Far Cry, Rainbow Six, and Assassin's Creed. So anything under those names is going to be going over to this new subsidiary. Now, what does that leave Ubisoft? Actual Ubisoft. Well, they're still working on the Prince of Persia remake, Project U, which I'm not entirely sure exactly what that is, but that's what it's called so far. Splinter Cell remake, Division 3, which that's actually being made. And no, this is not Heartland. That was some kind of like different multiplayer experience. But yeah, Division 3 is still being made. And then technically, even according to Ubisoft, Beyond Good and Evil 2 is still being made. Even though that's been like 15 years now, which just sounds, I don't know. That just sounds crazy. I don't even know if we're ever actually going to get that. But yeah, there's still several projects in the works for the original publisher. And so, not everyone's going to get laid off, but I'm pretty sure some people are. But yeah, Ubisoft 2 will have, self-direction and royalties to Ubisoft. Tencent, put in 25%. So this is interesting because this was also a loophole. Tencent cannot own any more of original Ubisoft as a publisher. And so they've created this subsidiary to get another injection from Tencent to help make some of these other games that are in the works. So we know that like Far Cry, let's see, what would it be now? Far Cry 7 is coming out in 2026. We know Prince of Persia Remake is coming out in 2026. And we also know that there's probably 1 or 2 more Assassin's Creed games that are coming out this year, and also more Assassin's Creed coming out in 2026 and beyond. Assassin's Creed is going to be a massive IP that Ubisoft is going to focus on. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting. And when we take a look at the company itself, they have 18,000 employees all over the world. So far, there's no mention of canceled games. So far, there's no mention of layoffs, but I'm sure those are coming. And two, so far, Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing fairly well. I don't think as much as they need it to. But yeah, Assassin's Creed Shadows right now has 3 million players plus. I think a lot of those are actually doing it on Ubisoft Plus, their subscription service, which would make more sense. I mean, yeah, it's a heck of a lot cheaper. It's $18 for 1 month instead of just paying for 70 or even more than that. But yeah, I still don't think it was big enough, unfortunately. 3 million players plus is bigger counts apparently with Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey than what they had, but I'm sure too the budget for Shadows was huge. Because again, they added 4 months of delay on top of that. And Ubisoft did mention that, that's 3 million players, not actually, again, units sold. If they did actually sell all of that, they would have made roughly at $70 a player about $210 million. And again, I just do not believe that is enough to actually cover the game development itself. Not to mention the delays, not to mention the marketing and everything else, just for Shadows. So again, I don't even think Shadows is profitable because AAA is so expensive anymore. But yeah, that also doesn't take into consideration all of the other games that haven't been doing well for Ubisoft. So Star Wars Outlaws, Prince of Persia Lost Crown, X-Defiant, Skull and Bones, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. It's like, okay, we got 5 games here that basically didn't make enough money, and then Assassin's Creed Shadows isn't even making enough yet for its own coverage of its game. And man, this just sucks. Like, this is not going anywhere. And the reviews so far for Shadows is that a lot of people do like it. I think it is better than what people expected. So yeah, it's going to get some pretty good review scores. And I'll be playing it pretty soon here myself. It's just been a little busy this week. I'm barely getting this out as it is. But yeah, Shadows is just kind of a safe bet of a game. And pretty I mean, it's an Ubisoft game. We all generally know what that means. Pretty safe. A lot of markers everywhere. There are some things that don't hold your hand as much, which is nice. There's some settings that you can turn on or keep off that don't hold your hand as much like in other Ubisoft games. But again, yeah, I'm going to play it. I'm going to get my own take on it, at least get some hours on and see what it's actually like. But this is really interesting, making a new subsidiary, Ubisoft 2 basically, and taking the 3 biggest IPs that they make money with, and what's going to happen to everybody else. If some of these other games, like let's say Splinter Cell Remake gets canceled, Prince of Persia doesn't sell well, and Beyond Good and Evil 2 never comes out, Project U is canceled. I mean, what if that type of stuff happens? Like, I think we could really see a lot of layoffs. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. So there is some worry too. Mentions of, in so many words, restructuring with Ubisoft, and so yeah, devs are already kind of talking on social media about being worried and working on some of their resumes because yeah, I mean they might actually get laid off. Look at what's been happening since the end of 2022. I mean, we are still going with layoffs, folks. We're a quarter of the way in to 2025, and the layoffs don't seem to be slowing down yet. And we've talked about that on the channel too. I think through 26, we're going to continue to have layoffs. Man, because it's a tough deal out there. Yeah, very interesting with Ubisoft 2, whatever they decide to call it. I'll be keeping up with that, and we'll actually see how these games come out. Because yeah, while they have creative direction, the devs are the same. So let's see if that can actually shine through. Let's talk about Nintendo Direct. This was on the 27th of March. And we got to see Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD remake. We knew that was coming already. It'll release sometime in 2025. Also had the Shadow Labyrinth, which is Pac-Man. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, you're watching, it's like, okay, that's literally Pac-Man. Oh, that's literally the sound of Pac-Man. Okay, from the arcade version. That's coming out on July 18th. kind of a new spin on Pac-Man from Bandai Namco. So yeah, just interesting though. Very interesting. We also had Patapon 1 and 2. This is a Sony IP that's coming on July 11th. Also had the Story of Seasons, the Grand Bazaar. This was a DS game, and this is coming over to Switch. That's August 27th. Also had Metroid Prime 4 Beyond 2025. Man, and this this is actually the first game that I played was a Metroid Prime 2, I think, or Metroid Prime 3 for like the GameCube. I remember playing this, and that was my first like outside of Mario and Donkey Kong experience for Nintendo, and it was amazing. And yeah, excuse me. Finally, get a Metroid Prime game again. I think it's great, and honestly, the game looks really good. Seems to run really well. Again, the combat doesn't look too challenging. There's going to be some boss fights, and there's some new abilities too. Apparently, you're going to have some psychic abilities, which you're going to be able to like move and shift and change things around a little bit in the world. Of course, you're going to have to do your scanning to know where you can go or what you can interact with. But yeah, there's definitely just some nostalgia there for me because, again, we haven't had this type of a Metroid Prime first-person shooter in a long time. So that's actually great to see. We also got to see Pokemon Legends ZA. We got to see a new trailer. We got to learn a little bit more about the game this time, which I'm very thankful for because I'm glad to be wrong about the Pokemon game. So let's get into it. So far, the Wild Zones, that's not the only place where Pokemon are going to be that you're going to be able to capture and all of that kind of jazz. But they're also going to be around the city. But maybe if you're looking for a particular type of Pokemon, then you can go into these wild zones or these wild parks where Pokemon live in the city and see if you can find the one you're actually looking for. But still, basically, you're just walking in, beating them up, and capturing them and taking them home. So that's pretty hilarious. There's also going to be not just around the city on the streets and in the corners and stuff, but also on the rooftops as well. So it's going to, again, there will be a benefit to actually poking around in the city some. Because maybe there's certain areas or regions of the city, or maybe hopefully there's sewers as well. We didn't see that, but I'm hoping that's the case, that you're going to be able to find some other Pokemon that maybe you can't find somewhere else. So yeah, I hope they're kind of adding some of that adventure into the game of looking for Pokemon, trying to capture them, trying to find them. And yeah, I'm actually glad to see that. Because again, if it's just wild zones, just walking in and capturing them, it's just like, man, that doesn't look great. I'm serious. Looks horrible. Some of you, had your other opinion on the video that I did, but I think it's important to talk about that type of stuff. And hey, your opinions are welcome, whether we agree or not. That's totally okay. Freedom of speech, that's important to maintain. But I do think it's important to actually take a look at what's being presented and not just buy it because of the brand. And that's partly what this channel is for, is to try to be as objective as possible. We also got to see a nighttime battle royale zones, which I think is going to be pretty awesome. Looks like the royale zones are kind of like the wild zones during the daytime, and then there are these royale zones at the nighttime where basically you can run into NPCs and they want to battle you right away, right? They see you at any point, they rush over, hey, let's battle. And just like the original Pokemon games on Game Boy, which I think is wonderful. That's a great aspect. And this adds a whole nother thing to the game too, with the day-night cycle. So yeah, these are going to be NPC trainers. Again, they're not going to be actual players, but there are quite a few of them, and you start at rank Z and work your way up all the way to A. And so yeah, the alphabet's pretty big. There's probably going to be at least a minimum of 26 trainers, hopefully. And yeah, that's actually really exciting too. So it kind of adds this new element to the game that they hadn't shared before. Again, it creates a little bit more adventure there, and something to actually work through and grind through. So yeah, there's some extra content there. So I'm thankful that Pokemon Legends ZA is actually looking and sounding better than they originally showed. And yeah, I hope this game is great. I mean, my wife and I were planning on getting a Switch 2, pre-ordering it. And if this game is pretty good, yeah, I honestly want to get it for myself, for my own kids, because they love Pokemon. And yeah, this will be one of the games on my list. So It is looking more interesting. I'm glad that I'm wrong about some of the aspects or some of the concerns that I had. And yeah, thank goodness, because I was getting a little worried about Pokemon there. Because, yeah, they need to take the time to innovate a little bit. All right, let's see. We also got to see Rhythm Heaven Groove, which I've never heard of before, and man, did this look like some. It's not to be mean, but like this did not look great. This really looked like a mobile game, or maybe like it. I don't know, man. Like this did not. This did did not look good. Didn't look like it should have even been in the showcase in the first place. So yeah, that was actually quite shocking to see. We also got to see virtual game cards. This is a new feature that's being added. Basically, if you digitally buy the game, you can move the game between two systems. You just have to make sure that you do a local link first. And then the virtual cards also allow you to share within your family groups. So however many members you have, you can technically share the game with someone else. You know, they have to be able to give it back so that you can play it yourself. So it's not like you can play multiple copies of the same game that you paid for. You still have to pay for it each time for each copy that you want. But here you can actually share the digital game, which has been one of the complaints with a lot of digitization for video games. Physical copy, you can just, hey, here you go ahead and play it. Like I'm borrowing Shadows right now. And that's not costing me any money, which is great. But yeah, I just thought this virtual card thing was actually pretty interesting. And it does also remind me of like the PlayStation Share, where you're able to share with friends or do a share for someone else to like remotely play on your console to play the game and stuff. Again, that's been around for quite some time. But yeah, ultimately, I feel like these features are just to get you more comfortable with digital sales. We mentioned too, I forget how long, not too long ago, but basically that digital sales finally topped higher than physical sales on Nintendo Switch for the first time ever in Nintendo's history, which is pretty concerning. And I think I'm basically done here. Let's start it over. Absolutely. But yeah, again, it's just like, you know, digital sales are creeping in. They're eventually going to take over on Nintendo 2 and stay that way. And so they're just adding more digital features to give the impression of some of the advantages to having physical. And while in a way I think that's cool, it is kind of saddening too, because in my opinion, Nintendo was the last bastion where most sales were physical, and now that's no longer the case. And then we're getting some of these features again, which is nice to have, but it's just kind of sad with the reality of what's happening. Also got to see Fantasy Life. Again, this was another game that it's like, what are they showing? Because as soon as they showed some multiplayer aspects, online multiplayer or local multiplayer, oh my word, the frame rate was like 10 frames per second. Really bad. So again, there's a couple of these games where it's like, what are these doing on here? Like, this is not, I don't know. It just didn't look great. We also got to see Monument Valley 1 and 2. This is coming out on April 15th. And Monument Valley 3 is coming in the summer of 2025. We also got to see Everybody's Golf Hot Shots coming in 2025. This will have local and online multiplayer up to 4 people total. And this is also a Sony game. So that was interesting to see too. We also got to see Marvel Cosmic Invasion. This actually looked really fun. If you haven't played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, that looks great. It's basically like a 2D side-scroller beat-em-up type of game, again with multiplayer elements. And man, it looks great. Like, I'm actually kind of excited for that. It's 4-player local and also online. Lastly, we got to see the Nintendo Direct app. It's basically a online or an app that shows you a calendar of showing you what's coming out, and it's basically a way for Nintendo to more or less directly share news with you directly to the consumer. Again, trying to get away from YouTube or anywhere else or articles, just giving it to you directly, and that'll of course produce hype for different stuff. and that ultimately will be better for them in the future. It did sound too at the very end of that little presentation that the app needs to be connected with your Nintendo account. So it's not just an app that you can download and just use. You actually have to connect your Nintendo account to it. It sounded like in order to actually use it. So that was interesting too. Yeah, overall for the whole Nintendo Direct, I don't know. A lot of the IPs I had no idea about. I didn't play growing up on Game Boy or GameCube or anything or N64. I don't know. Kind of mid, in my opinion. There were a few IPs on there that were fine, and we did get some more information too. But other ones, it's just like, wow, what is this doing here? It doesn't look finished. It doesn't look like it runs well for multiplayer. It doesn't look like anyone would really be interested in this type of game, or maybe even kind of looks like a slop game. Again, that's not to be mean, but Nintendo has had that problem on their store with a lot of kind of slop-like games, trying to take and misrepresent games for a brand. So that's been something that Nintendo has been struggling with already. And then it's just like, man, Showcase, like, what is this doing in here? But yeah, some exciting ones like Pokemon Legends ZA and Metroid Prime 4. And we had Dragon Quest 1-2 HD remake. Yeah, those look pretty interesting. And Everybody Golfs and Marvel Cosmic Invasion. Like, yeah, there were some good ones in there. But again, for over 30 minutes, it's kind of long to actually be showing what they showed. So, yeah, interesting. Also, too, the fact that there's several Sony titles in there, Sony-owned IPs, and while they are old, I just think it's interesting that some of these you can't actually play on PlayStation. You actually have to basically just buy them on Nintendo. So, Sony and Nintendo are getting cozier. They're sharing more IPs, just like Xbox is getting more cozier too with Nintendo. Both Sony and Xbox are getting cozier with PC and Steam. So, yeah, I don't know. And then Xbox is getting cozier with PlayStation, but PlayStation isn't getting cozier the other way. But yeah, I just think it's interesting to see how the only true first party that we have in closed ecosystem is Nintendo. That's the only one left because PlayStation and Xbox, they're really starting to share with everyone else. And so, in my opinion, PlayStation is not first party anymore. We didn't even have games last year that were really first party of their own. They basically buy them, and they've been buying them since PlayStation 3. So, and it was really bad in PlayStation 4. And, but yeah, it's just interesting to see what's going on. And I really don't think, from the numbers that we have, that console is really growing. And so, yeah, they're having to go to other markets, make sure things are profitable, get money from somewhere else. And, hey, that's just business. So, yeah, very interesting. So we did hear, not much news here, but The Witcher 4, we did hear that at the earliest, it's coming in 2027. So we got a ways to wait. And also found out, too, that Intergalactic, again, with no delays, is also coming at the earliest 2027. So, yeah, these are a couple of games that we got to see. And, man, it's, we got to see these in 24. So we're going to have to wait basically 3 years at a minimum to actually get these games. That's, of course, with no delays. And I wonder if these games are ultimately going to be next-gen console releases, like launch titles, if you will. So, because again, we didn't really see anything of gameplay. There's maybe a little bit, but even Intergalactic right now, we've heard is that and they're actually making enough right now to actually play the game, play Intergalactic itself, like it's playable. That's kind of crazy. And we're still going to wait another 3 years. So I'm thinking it's either a pretty big game, truly is open world, or some other features of the game that are going to be pretty big and definitely are going to need some polish to make sure they get through everything. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting that, and it's frustrating for me personally that we hear about these games and then they take forever. They take forever to come out, and then we're getting close to the release. Oh, it's delayed. Oh, it's delayed. Oh, it's delayed. It's like frick me, man. Just give me the game. Like I'm okay with a teaser. Okay, 3 years out. I'm okay with an early access launch being for like a couple of years, max. Like that's okay too. I think it was a little long for Baldur's Gate 3, but it did, become pretty beneficial for the game because again, it's a really great, runs really well, massive game, and a lot of people enjoyed it. They made a ton of money. But boy, it gets frustrating with just like dangling the carrot in front of the consumers, and that is starting to just kind of piss them off, myself included. There's been some games I've been excited for. I know there's been some other people that have also been excited for games, but then it takes so long to actually get the game, and there's other stuff that comes out. There's other stuff that isn't delayed, and so that's where the money goes, and they miss out on some sales. Even my wife, she's not a huge gamer, but there's some things that she's been excited for, and now that things are going to be pushed back in some cases, like Chocolatier, she's just not excited about it anymore. It's like, the game's never going to come out. I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm just going to focus on something else. Whoops. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think that's really necessarily a good message. And while some people really don't care, there might actually be enough people that do to hurt sales. And that's an interesting idea. Because, yeah, when we get Witcher 4 and Intergalactic, I'm not sure if I'm going to be interested in those games at that point. There might be other IPs by then. There's a lot of small studios that have broken off and formed their own, like from BioWare and Call of Duty and creators of Mass Effect. And anyway, this is just off the cuff, as you can tell. But like, there's been a lot of really good developers that are making their own games, making their own studios, and they're going to be coming out with their games too within the next several years. So like, there's just going to be more competition for like the AA and AAA space. And I think these legendary, I'm going to start calling them legendary AAA studios, they're going to have some competition, I think. Because they're going to have those bloated budgets. They're going to want to be a safer bet, make sure that they can make some cash, put microtransactions in there, battle pass, blah, 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 whatever. And again, like, then we're going to have these other smaller studios where there's real passion behind the project. The game is made for the player, not just to make money for the company. And you're going to be able to tell. You're going to be able to freaking tell. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Okay, let's talk about Hogwarts Legacy Director's Cut. So we've been hearing about this for a while. And this is now canceled. This was actually being done by Rocksteady. They made the Suicide Squad game, which was really, really bad. After an hour, I couldn't play it anymore. I'm so glad I borrowed it from GameStop. But yeah, the temp that's taken over Haddad's job, again, he was, I'm done, I'm moving on. No, basically you were fired. You were pushed out of Warner Brothers Gaming, and thank goodness a lot of the decisions that he made were just not good. And that's why he's gone. But anyway, the temp, until a full replacement can be found, has been reviewing a lot of the projects at Warner Brothers Games. And, I'd mentioned before that Hogwarts Legacy Director's Cut didn't really make a lot of sense at the time because Hogwarts Legacy was already made in its entirety. There wasn't going to be any DLCs. There wasn't going to be any extra content, whatever. And, like, that was a completely finished project. And it did really well. So the idea was probably from Haddad before he left, hey, let's make some DLC. Let's make a director's cut, put some more content in there, which is like, okay, what else what else are you going to add? Because you can't add Quidditch, you idiots. Because you made that a separate game, which you shouldn't have. You should have just made it a DLC. Man, that would have sold like freaking hotcakes. I'm serious. And instead, the game really didn't even sell at all. So, I mean, whatever. Bye, Haddad. Thank goodness. Thank goodness you're gone. Just ridiculous. But yeah, so we now see that it's officially canceled. And this doesn't look good for Rocksteady. So what's next? Apparently they're pitching a Batman game. Did it get greenlit? We don't know. I mean, two projects in a row, whether big or small, that are not successful, does not look good because we're now looking at like starting back in 2017, 2018 for starting Suicide Squad. That comes out, totally flops. And then we're looking at Director's Cut, which they've been working on for probably a year, maybe a little more. Well, that's gone. They're not working on the sequel. That's being done by Avalanche. So if Rocksteady doesn't have their Batman game and um, it doesn't get canceled, I guess they'll stick around. But man, it doesn't look good for the studio. And like Rocksteady, cow, the people that made it what it was, they were amazing, and they're just not there anymore. And Rocksteady is just not the same. And we've seen this with a lot of studios too lately. And it's sad because those are like special names for me personally. You know, I hear these names, it's like, oh yeah, those should be great. And then, man, yep, it's brutal. It really is brutal. So I'm kind of expecting layoffs. I don't know if the Batman game is going to be continued or if that's ultimately going to be canceled too. But again, this is just another example where the publisher is like, look, you have to make money. Otherwise, this is just going to be painful. And I think we'll continue to see these layoffs. Yeah, we'll have to see. All we know is Avalanche is still working on the sequel, doing pretty well, and they're doing a lot of hiring. So, yeah, they're getting into full production, baby. But again, it's going to be a few years before we actually see it. But then, too, it's like Hogwarts Legacy is before all of the Harry Potter games and books and stuff. Excuse me, movies and books. So I'm not exactly sure where they're going to take the story. Hopefully it's good. The gameplay was certainly fun enough, and being able to see the school and walk around and find secrets and adventure outside too and see places. I mean, they really did great for the fan service. And it's like, okay, you've now given us the fan service. Now what are you going to do? So, because if they just try to give more fan service, I really don't think that's going to be that successful second time around. And so, yeah, it'll be curious to see what they do. We do know, too, that the sequel is also going to be tied directly to the TV show that's coming by a showrunner that hasn't read the books. You know, that's going to be great. I don't have hope for that. I really don't. So, yeah, I'll keep you guys updated. Let's talk about April games that are coming out next month. We're going to have South of Midnight on the 8th. We're going to have a Blueprints, which is like a puzzle game. It actually does look pretty fun if you're looking for something to do. That's coming out on the 10th. We have Star Overdrive on the 13th. We have Warside. Woo! I can't wait for that game. That's coming out on the 14th for PC only, and the console versions are going to be coming out in the summer. So when we get to the summertime, I will be picking up that game, and we're going to be playing it for you. So, well, let's even do some multiplayer battles if any of you are interested. I'm so down for that. Monument Valley 1 and 2, which we talked about, that's coming out on the 15th. Indiana Jones is coming out for PS5 on the 17th. Expedition 33 is the 24th. Days Gone Remaster is the 25th. And Forza Horizon 5 is on the 29th, again for PlayStation 5. So, again, fair list of games here. We just had Atomfall drop 2 as well, and I'm going to be digging into that too. Man, I mean, schedule's busy, folks. Things are not slowing down. So thanks for tuning in. If you like the content, go ahead and like, sub, all that jazz, but also share it too. You guys help me promote the channel, and yeah, it just brings it to more people faster. That's really what the goal is. Thank you, too, for those that have been a part of the playthroughs. That's been fun. We're going to continue Halo. It's just been hard to get that scheduling down with Tanner lately, and then I've had some own stuff in my own personal life that's been keeping me busy the last month. So, yeah, we're still going to be continuing to do Halo, and then we also have Tomb Raider 4 that I'm going through. That will be out every Monday. So, and then, yeah, when we're done with these games, we're going to be bringing you some other ones. So I'm always going to have a solo game going and a co-op game going. And then, of course, we'll have initial looks and reviews to stuff. My wife and I are trying to finish Split Fiction right now. I'm going to go through some AC Shadows and then Atomfall as well. And then, yeah, we'll keep bringing you the news every week, every weekend. So until next time, folks, we'll see you guys on the next one.